All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of 12th Man Up. Thank you for joining me. Training camp is here, which means the NFL season is right around the corner. I am so excited for this NFL season. I feel like every year I get even a little bit more excited. And there's a lot of talk about going into this NFL season. Starting off, I'm going to talk about Chris Carson, who is now retiring from the Seahawks. He couldn't come back from his neck injury that he suffered last season against the 49ers. I wish him all the best. I had a feeling we were going to let him go since we picked up Ken Walker III. And truly, I think he was a strong running back, underrated, and I wish him all the best. Also, we're going to talk about KJ Wright, who signed a one-day contract to retire as a Seahawk. I really appreciate that. He was such a special player. I wish him all the best as well. I miss seeing him play with Bobby, and now we got to play against Bobby. So, it's going to be an interesting season without all these star players, Wilson, Bobby, KJ. But luckily, we did sign one star player, DK Metcalf, thankfully. Signed him a $72 million contract with a $31 million signing bonus, which I believe this is necessary. We need to sign some strong players. This is around the same amount that Tyreek Hill got. A.J. Brown, the yearly bonus is around the same, so it was a good deal for both ends. Also, Baker Mayfield. Last time I talked about him, it was still up in the air whether or not Seattle was going to pick him up or not. Thankfully, he's going to Carolina. I'm glad we don't have to deal with him. But now, everyone's talking about whether or not we're going to pick up Jimmy Garoppolo or not. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what other sports hosts outside of the Seahawks fan base are saying about the Seahawks. Starting off with Rich Eisen. I actually agree about this when it comes to referring to Jimmy Garoppolo. He stated, "Why would you trade for somebody who would cost you $24 million that you know the team that has him on the roster is moved on from him? Why would you trade him? Teams will just wait for you to release him." And this is 100% true. No team is going to spend $24 million on Jimmy Garoppolo when they know you're going to move on from him. So it's smart that Seattle's not picking him up. There are a lot of people who are wondering why we aren't and why we're starting with Drew Lock or Geno Smith. But I don't think people realize. Let's say we pick up Jimmy Garoppolo, okay, and he plays for us, and we go 6-11. We go 6-11, and we still end up drafting a quarterback anyways, right? Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. We end up getting a quarterback anyways. This will literally be the same scenario that the 49ers had in 2020. They went 6-10 with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then they drafted Trey Lance, and then they developed Trey Lance with Jimmy Garoppolo on the team. Do you think Jimmy Garoppolo really wants to go through that again? Not at all. He wants to be the starting quarterback somewhere, and it's not going to be in Seattle because Seattle is counting on either Drew Lock to be the starting quarterback and perform well, and if not, which will most likely happen, we'll pick up a quarterback in the next draft and develop him. If there's one thing Pete Carroll is good at, it's developing players. And he has a lot of players to develop. So, we got other announcers like Max Kellerman saying they cannot be letting Drew Lock or Geno Smith starting this season. And I don't blame him because there's theathletic.com posted the top, all the quarterbacks ranked out of 32 teams. The last two players, 34, Drew Lock, 35, Geno Smith. There's 32 teams in the NFL, and they have Drew Lock ranked 34th, and in Tier 5, all by himself, Geno Smith ranked 35th. It's kind of embarrassing, and that's why all these other announcers are like, are they really just going to forcefully plummet the season? Are they really just going to get that draft pick? And it does come with consequences. I've been stating, we're going to have a terrible season, and then we're going to draft a quarterback next year. But it's going to be tough as a team going into this season to try to build a culture. You got Colin Cowherd saying this team sucks. Worst team in the league not named Atlanta. They have no leader. And that's a good point. We don't have Russell Wilson anymore to stand on the podium and say, go Hawks. We got this. We're good. Because even last season when we were struggling, we always still had Russell Wilson. We're still trying to get better. We're learning. We're figuring it out. This year, it's like, who's our leader? Who's gonna bring this team together when we go 1-8 and playing the Bucks week 10? It's gonna be tough. We're gonna rely on Tyler Lockett. That locker room is gonna be tough to be in. So I believe two things can be true at once. One, Seattle's not going to pick up Garoppolo or any other quarterback this season because they're waiting till the next draft to pick a quarterback. So they're not going to get Garoppolo. Now, second, because they don't have any leadership within the locker room anymore, that locker room is going to be really tough to be an environment in. It's going to be a tough environment. There may be some leaks or bad news coming out, and it's up to Pete Carroll and John Snyder to lead this team into the fire, because that's what we're about to head into. And that's the question of the day. Does Pete Carroll and John Snyder know what they're doing? Do they? Now, I have spoken about rebuilding around the quarterback position and developing players in certain positions before. But according to Pro Football Focus, our team is ranked really low in almost every category of positions. We're going to go over those positions a little bit today. Now, as I mentioned, Athletic.com had us ranked last in the quarterback spot. Pro Football Focus doesn't have us ranked any better. They have us in D or T with Drew Lock, which is basically prove it or lose it. Can't disagree with that. This is Drew Lock's last chance to prove himself. Heading into the offensive line, this is just sad. They have us ranked 32nd, the last offensive line that should start. Even with Charles Cross at left tackle and Abraham Lucas in right tackle. They believe, Pro Football Focus, that with these rookies, they're just too unreliable. Gabe Jackson, even though he's a strong right guard, he's getting a little bit older. So it's really dependent on those young guys. And this is going to be a trend. A lot of these positions that we're going to go over, all these players are new and fresh. And so Pro Football Focus doesn't have us ranked really high. Moving on into the running back spot. Now, this chart was made before Chris Carson had retired because they have Chris Carson ranked 14th. He's a strong running back when he was healthy, but he's no longer here. So we're going to have to rely on Rashad Penny, who actually performed really well last season. In the tail end of the season when he came healthy, he was really good. So hopefully him and Ken Walker III can surprise a couple of teams this next season. So we're not even outside of Chris Carson. We're not ranked anywhere with Rashad Penny or Ken Walker. Heading into the wide receiver range, this is the category where we're actually pretty strong in. They have DK Metcalf ranked 11th, the 11th best wide receiver, which with his size and his skill set, I believe he is an 11th or possibly a top 10 wide receiver. Him and A.J. Brown are really close there. Got to give it to A.J. Brown, though. He's done amazing things in Tennessee, who's now with Philadelphia. So wish him the best of luck. Now, this is why it was important to sign DK Metcalf, because we do need some positions that are strong in. We do need some leadership. And even though DK's only been with the team for a couple of years, it's him and Tyler Lockett's turn to lead this team, especially on the offensive side. Heading into the defensive line, our defensive line is also weak. They have us ranked 29th. Pro Football Focus has us ranked 29th. With Poona Ford, Shelby Harris, and Al Woods. But there's just not a lot of strong pressure anywhere off the edge. Now, I want to point out that Nuwasu, who we picked up from the Chargers, he was a free agent, he got an interception at training camp yesterday, so that's some good news. And we also have Darrell Taylor, which is his second year here. And Boye Mafe, who we picked up in the draft. A lot of new guys. And this is, like how I said, this is the trend. So they don't have us ranked really high because we got not a lot of new developing players. And we'll just have to see how well this team performs. It's going to come up to Pete Carroll and John Snyder to pick players that can develop quick and be coached really quick in preparation for a quarterback next season. Now, our secondary, they have us ranked in Tier 5, 30th. And that's with, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, Trey Brown, Sidney Jones, Justin Coleman. Now, obviously, Sidney Jones and Justin Coleman, they're not much of a threat. But Trey Brown actually outperformed what a lot of people thought he would do last season, so that's a good sign. Quandre Diggs, I think, is a strong safety. I think he could put up some good numbers. He was good last season. Jamal Adams, outside of the kind of the blitzing area, He wasn't too great in coverage. I'm still waiting to see him perform at the level that we got him for. 2 first-round picks. Hopefully this year he steps it up. He doesn't need surgery on his finger. Almost there was a report saying that he's broken and that he had to get it cast on it and whatnot. But he's back at training camp today, and there is no need for any kind of surgery or anything. So that's good news. I wanted to point out as well that according to what I've heard, that training camp yesterday was a struggle for the offense. Offensively, Geno Smith 4 times in the red zone couldn't put the ball in. Drew Lock was only able to put it 2 out of the 4 times, and that the defense overall dominated. So these quarterbacks are struggling already in training camp, and it's not like not expected, but it is showing that what quarterback is going to start. I guess right now Geno Smith still leads the way, but Drew Lock is performing slightly better, I guess. But it's up to Pete Carroll and it's up to John Snyder to develop these young players in preparation for a quarterback next season. So now, since I don't have the highest expectations for our season overall and how well we perform in our rankings and whatnot, what I'm looking for as a Seahawks fan is looking at specific players and seeing, well, how well can they perform? Who do we pick up? Who do we trade? Who do we get? And is this going to help build our team so that next season or 2 years from now, we have a quarterback and a team that can possibly do more than what they're doing today? Is there a playoff potential? And is it developing into a possible Super Bowl contender? Because that's the goal. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo are going to take us to the Super Bowl. And Pete Carroll is good at developing players. This is their plan. They got rid of Wilson, and they're trying to rebuild this team. They're going to get a new quarterback. So it's on them to perform now. And Pete Carroll's got to keep that locker room together, and John Snyder's got to draft well. So there's a lot to look for this season as a Seahawks fan, whether it's our record or developing players. Other than that, that's going to be all for today. Thank you so much, guys.